Getting back at my ex-wife. A Little League masterstroke. My ex and I married young. At the time, I thought we had it all: love, devotion, and a bright future ahead. But apparently, her definition of devotion included spreading that love around while I was working hard to make ends meet. She wasn't thrilled about being married to a broke college student and decided to cheat her way into a new relationship that could offer her more financial security. I found out the hard way, walking in on a man old enough to be her father spooning his diabetic soft serve into my wife. The next morning, I went straight to a lawyer, and within a year, our marriage was officially over. I thought that would be the end of it. We didn't have kids, no shared assets, and absolutely no reason to interact ever again. But I was wrong. The harassment begins. Over the next few years, she made it her personal mission to make my life hell. By then, my career had taken off and I started a small freight company. I wasn't rolling in money, but I was doing well enough. That's when she decided she was entitled to a slice of my success. She'd call at random times, threatening lawsuits and demanding what she was owed. She even went on social media to trash my name, though none of it stuck. I ignored her antics, confident that the law and common sense were on my side. Eventually, her harassment slowed to an occasional drive-by past my house during holidays when she visited her parents. The perfect opportunity. Years passed. Life moved on. The guy she cheated with had a heart attack and died, leaving her to raise their child alone. Tough break, but I wasn't exactly shedding tears. She moved to the other side of the state, and for a while, it seemed like she was finally out of my life for good. That's when I heard through the grapevine that her kid was starting Little League the next season. I've always been a big supporter of youth sports, so I saw this as the perfect opportunity to make a statement. I contacted the league in her community and offered to sponsor a team through my company, OP Transportation. My company name includes my first and last name, ensuring she'd know exactly who was behind it. My initial plan was simple. Her kids' team would play mine once or twice that season, and she'd have to sit in the stands surrounded by my name. But fate decided to sweeten the deal. A stroke of luck. Little League teams draft players randomly, and by sheer coincidence, her kid got assigned to my team. Suddenly, my petty plan turned into the ultimate passive-aggressive revenge. Every game, every post-win pizza party, every time she washed her kid's uniform, she had to stare at my name emblazoned across the front in big, bold letters. I can only imagine the frustration she felt, knowing there was nothing she could do about it. That summer, I didn't have to say a word or lift a finger. My presence was everywhere, and the best part, I got to support a group of kids and give back to the community while thumbing my nose at my ex one last time. It was the perfect blend of good karma and sweet, sweet pettiness. Story 2. Suck it, Grandma. Growing up, I was the fat kid in a family where obesity and related health problems were almost a rite of passage. Every time I tried to talk about losing weight as a kid, my grandma seemed determined to sabotage me. She wouldn't even leave the drive-thru unless I ordered something and saving food for later. Forget about it. She'd insist I eat it all, even if I was stuffed or didn't want it. Granted, I was a picky eater back then. Things got so bad that I developed burns under my chest and needed powder to deal with it. When I finally moved away from her, I had a major diabetic scare. That was my wake-up call, so I started working out. But when my grandma found out, by accident, thanks to my mom letting it slip, I'll never forget her reaction. She smirked and said, "Huh, I give him a week." My mom snapped back, letting her know I'd already been at it for a month. But those words stuck with me, and eventually, I gave up. Fast forward to this year, I had another diabetic scare and even got rejected by someone I liked. That was it. I decided to take this seriously. I went from being 6 feet 2 inches and 300 pounds to 256 pounds. My back pain is gone. I don't smell like I used to. Yeah, I said it. And girls actually talk to me now. My confidence? Through the roof. My mom's even lost weight alongside me, and my other family members are starting to notice. My sister's working on shedding her freshman 15, and my aunt recently asked for tips. Mentally, I feel great. And guess what? I'm the one who probably doesn't have diabetes anymore. I'm getting tested again soon to confirm. Now, Grandma's staying with us for who knows how long. Every time she glares at me, it's like fuel for my fire. My doctor told me to walk my imaginary dog and keep exercising, so I do. She's begrudgingly acknowledged my weight loss, but whenever people on her video calls see me in the background and start complimenting me, she gets uncomfortably quiet. It's poetic justice, honestly. The same words she used to crush my motivation as a kid are now propelling me forward. Petty? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. Take that, you chicken cutlet hoarding, ham-legged, sausage roll waddling menace. When weight loss comes up, she tries to fade into the background, but I see her. I always see her. And yes, I know she's still trying to sabotage me with her food offerings and her passive-aggressive stares when I fast or turn her down. But guess what? Now I walk around shirtless, not out of discomfort like before, but to spite her. Every glare she throws my way is proof she's paying attention. Watching me, my mom, and my sister lose weight while she's stuck? Priceless. I'm thriving, Grandma. I can run while you waddle. I breathe easy while you're out of breath. So go ahead and stare. Stare at my smaller man boobs. Stare at me walking around without breaking a sweat. Stare at your failure to hold me back. Oh, and weightlifting class? Can't wait to show off even more progress. Still no girlfriend, though. Edit 1. Just scrolled through my camera roll. Holy crap, I was huge. Edit 2. Thanks for the love and awards, everyone. I didn't expect this to blow up. You're all amazing. Story 3. My go-to revenge for bad service. The world's worst song. I'm a regular at sports bars. I go to watch games, enjoy some classic bar food, and unwind. Most places I visit have one of those digital jukebox machines on the wall, where you can spend $1 to play any song available on Apple Music across the entire bar. This setup, my friends, has become my secret weapon for those rare occasions when I receive truly awful service. Enter the song Tubular Bells Part 2. If you've never heard of it, congratulations, you've been spared. It's not just a song, it's an auditory assault. Imagine someone aimlessly noodling on random instruments with no rhythm, no beat, no build-up, just endless, disjointed noise. Think of the start of a Pink Floyd track that never evolves, constantly teases you with potential, and then veers off into utter chaos. It's the kind of music that makes your brain beg for mercy. Oh, and did I mention? It's 26 minutes long. Most places can't stop the track without rebooting the entire sound system. I've stuck around a few times to watch the chaos unfold, but usually I make my exit right after hitting play to preserve my anonymity. Last month, I had the perfect opportunity to unleash my musical vengeance. I was at a well-known chain sports bar. The service that night was abysmal. Our food was mediocre. The server came by once in over an hour to refill our beers, and we had to visit the bar ourselves just to top off. To add insult to injury, after about 90 minutes, we were kicked out of our table because it had been reserved for a group arriving to watch a ball game. I wasn't mad about the table situation, I get it, but the overall experience had left me annoyed enough to take action. We relocated to the bar, and that's when I decided to improve the night. For myself, at least. I discreetly walked over to the jukebox and queued up Tubular Bells Part 2. Then, I settled into my new spot, ordered another drink, and waited. A few minutes later, the song started playing. The mood in the bar shifted almost immediately. Conversation slowed, heads turned, and a collective wave of confusion spread across the room. You could see people trying to figure out what the hell was playing and why. As the disjointed music dragged on, visible frustration appeared on faces all around. Some tried to ignore it, others openly complained to the staff. Knowing they'd likely have to kill the entire sound system to make it stop, I savored the moment for a bit longer, then casually finished my drink and left. I knew that soon the sound system would be overridden for the ball game, so my little prank wouldn't last forever. But for those 26 minutes, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching the collective irritation unfold. So, to anyone who frequents bars with those digital jukeboxes, you're welcome. Tubular Bells. Part 2 is my gift to you, for when you too need a harmless yet effective way to let off some steam. Story 4. I got an obnoxious passenger fired. Let me tell you about the most satisfying revenge story of my life so far. Buckle up. It's a bit long, but absolutely worth it. So, I'm a South African currently living in Japan. Earlier this year, I took my Japanese wife to meet my parents in South Africa and enjoy a bit of a honeymoon. It was a great trip, but the journey back, that's where things got interesting. Our first flight back to Japan was from Johannesburg to Qatar. As my wife and I settled into our seats, I noticed a group of passengers around us wearing matching shirts from some pharmaceutical company. Among them was a loud, chatty woman sitting right behind us with 2 male co-workers. Let's call her Brandy. At first, I didn't pay her much attention. I was more focused on getting through the takeoff. I'm a nervous flyer. I popped in my earbuds, cranked up some Meshuggah, and prepared myself for the 8-hour flight ahead. As soon as the seatbelt sign turned off, Brandy kicked off the festivities by ordering a round of brandy and cokes for herself and her buddies. With every drink, her voice got louder and more obnoxious. By her 6th drink, she'd shifted to a charming topic: her disapproval of interracial relationships. Yes, she was that kind of person. Even through the face-melting guitar riffs blasting in my ears, I could hear her rambling. Apparently, so could the rest of the cabin. Eventually, a woman seated a few rows away had enough. She called out, "Ma'am, could you please keep it down?" I'm trying to sleep. I paused my music and pulled out an earbud, sensing some drama. Brandy, offended, snapped back, "Excuse me? This isn't a nighttime flight. Haven't you heard of earplugs?" She then carried on her conversation as if nothing had happened. At this point, the tension in the cabin was palpable. Those of us in earshot exchanged knowing glances. We all knew this was going to escalate. About 20 minutes later, a flight attendant politely asked Brandy to lower her volume. She reluctantly agreed, ordered another round, and quieted down for about half an hour. Then, as expected, she was back at it, louder than ever. The next passenger to confront her was a Chinese woman traveling with her young child. In broken English, she pleaded, "Please be quiet. My child keeps waking up because of you." Brandy's response: she mocked the woman by butchering Chinese phrases like, "Can you speak Chinese?" I understood exactly what she was trying to say, and let me tell you, it was painfully bad. The frustrated woman eventually gave up and returned to her seat. By now, the flight attendants were fully aware of Brandy's antics. Their solution? Close the bar for the entire cabin. While I understood their reasoning, I was annoyed. I'd been hoping for a couple more whiskeys before landing. But Brandy wasn't done. A short while later, I heard the faint pop of a bottle being opened and liquid pouring into cups. Yep, she'd cracked open her duty-free brandy and resumed her obnoxious conversation, now at full volume. At this point, my wife, who I thought had been sleeping, turned to me with a look of pure rage. That's when I snapped. Normally, I avoid causing a scene, but I wasn't about to let this woman ruin my wife's flight. Standing up, I announced loud enough for the whole cabin to hear, "Excuse me, everyone. By a show of hands, who here would like these people to shut the fuck up?" About 30 passengers raised their hands. I turned to Brandy, pointed at her, and said, "Look! Understand? Shut up!" The cabin erupted in applause. My wife hugged me, shocked but grateful, A flight attendant even slipped me a couple of mini whiskey bottles with my next Coke as a thank you. Thankfully, Brandy and her crew passed out for the rest of the flight, and we were finally able to relax. But Brandy wasn't done yet. On descent, she woke up and started passive-aggressively jabbing at the entertainment screen on the back of my seat, trying to get a rise out of me. I ignored her, having dealt with plenty of tantrums in my job teaching kids. When we landed, Brandy saw my wife and me and decided to up her game. She started hurling insults about my weight and my marriage, claiming I'd married an Asian woman because I couldn't get a real South African woman. Her taunts were pathetic, like something out of high school. I just smiled and walked off the plane. While waiting at the gate for our connecting flight to Malaysia, I spotted Brandy taking selfies nearby. I sat next to a guy wearing the same company shirt and casually asked, "Hey, what's that woman's name? She looks like someone I went to high school with." He told me, and that was all I needed. Using the airport's Wi-Fi, I found the company's Facebook page and website. I sent a detailed account of Brandy's behavior, including her colorful comments about relationships. The next 2 flights were blissfully uneventful, and we made it back to Japan safe and sound. 2 weeks later, I got an email from the company's CEO asking for my number. When he called, he profusely apologized for Brandy's behavior. Turns out by the time she landed in Malaysia, he'd seen my message, rebooked her flight back to South Africa for the next day, and fired her upon her arrival at the Johannesburg airport. To celebrate, I stopped by the store on my way home and picked up a bottle of brandy and Coke. My wife and I toasted to justice being served. Story 5. Testing the Family Helps Family motto. This is a petty revenge story that hits all the right notes. It's about my childhood friend Greg, whose life was shaped by a classic golden child family dynamic and how he finally turned the tables. The background. Greg was the firstborn to young parents who weren't ready for the responsibilities of parenthood. As a result, he spent most of his early years at his grandparents' house, which is how we met. They lived near my family, and we became close friends. When Greg was 7, his parents had a second child, Jane. From the moment she was born, they announced to everyone that Jane was their makeup kid, the one they were going to raise right. As Greg and Jane grew up, the favoritism was glaring. Greg was a solid student, a great friend, and an all-around good kid. He worked hard, saved money, and eventually went to college and then university, where he majored in software engineering. He even met his future wife, Sarah, there, who herself graduated in chemical engineering. After school, they both got good jobs and bought a condo together. Jane, on the other hand, was the stereotypical spoiled child. She barely passed high school after transferring out due to false allegations against a teacher. She wrecked 3 cars in accidents, still lived at home at 22, and had everything: cars, computers, vacations, and fast food. Paid for by her parents. The financial drain. Even after Greg moved out, his parents didn't stop depending on him financially. They constantly asked for loans, which Greg, being a bit of a pushover, would give without telling Sarah. The amounts ranged from a few $100s to several thousand. This became a constant source of tension between Greg and Sarah. She'd find out, they'd argue, and Greg would try to stand up to his parents, only for them to guilt-trip him with lines like, "Family helps family when times are tough," or "Blood is thicker than water." They both knew the money was being funneled to Jane, but it wasn't until Greg and Sarah found out they were expecting their first child that things really changed. The turning point learning. He was going to be a dad seemed to flip a switch in Greg's mind. He realized he now had his own family to care for and protect, and he didn't want toxic people like his parents in their lives. With Sarah's approval, Greg decided to test his parents' mantra of family helps family one last time, and get a little revenge in the process. The setup. Greg and Sarah started house hunting and eventually found a place they loved. After their offer was accepted, Greg called his parents with a fabricated sob story. He told them he'd lost his job and was on the verge of losing his condo. He said he needed $5,000 to avoid being homeless. Predictably, the excuses started pouring in. Messages flooded in, dripping with condescension. If you're man enough to play house, you should be able to stand on your own 2 feet. Greg took it all in stride. He wasn't expecting them to help, but it was still satisfying to see their true colors. As the closing date approached, Greg lowered his request to a couple $100 just to see if they'd budge. They didn't. On moving day, a group of us helped Greg and Sarah pack and settle into their new home. His parents, who knew the date and the supposed urgency of his situation, didn't even call to check on him. The final blow. Greg went silent after the move. He didn't block his parents, curious to see how long it would take them to notice. About 2 months later, his dad sent a confused message. They'd dropped by his old condo and found someone else living there. Greg's response was perfect. "Thank you for showing me how much family helps family when times are tough. I hope Jane shows you the same support you showed me when the time comes. Sincerely, Greg, Sarah, my fiancé, and soon-to-be daughter." Then he blocked them. He hasn't spoken to them since.